Hey all, Blake here with another video, and I know a lot of people really struggle with confusion around ordering fish online, what they do when they turn up, what to expect in the meantime, and everything else that goes around to it. If you're new to ordering fish online, it can be quite a daunting and stressful process, so this video here today is going to try and alleviate a lot of that. As thanks also to my friends at Aquarium Central. You might remember I recently did a store tour there whilst I was up in Queensland. So once I got home and released that video to the public, they did message me and say that, they'd really like to help their customers understand what to do when the fish turn up and try and make the process a little bit easier. So here we are today. Let's jump straight into the video today and learn all about what to do when fish turn up on your doorstep. So to get started, obviously we can't have fish turn up at our doorstep without first ordering them. So we jump on the website and we take a scroll through. Now there's pluses and minuses to ordering fish online. First of all, obviously you can't see them in person to know the exact look of the fish, and obviously a lot of websites use stock photos and that sort of thing. Hey, I just wanted to interrupt because whilst I was editing, I realized at this stage I probably should have mentioned that, as well as that, on the websites that you order from, the photos are usually adult fish in great conditions at their peak color. So if you're ordering a fish that gets up to 15 centimeters and you're ordering them at 3 centimeters, then you can't expect them to be fully colored up or in the condition that they might appear in the photo. So a lot of people get confused when different looking fish turn up. So just be aware of that, and when you're doing your research the juvenile versions of those fish to find out exactly what you're gonna receive. As well as that, fish in the bag won't have as vibrant coloration because they're under a stressed environment, and the first thing that they'll do is limit their coloration just to sort of conserve energy and as a bit of a defense mechanism as well. So keep that in mind as well. They will look better once they're out of the bag and in your tank. But we do have an advantage whereby we can do a lot of research up front rather than trying to look on our phone in store and trying to figure out what exactly these fish entail. And of course, I always recommend being well educated before picking up any fish. You do have an animal's life in your hands when you do. So I spent a bit of time scrolling through the website, checking out what fish were on offer, and I was pretty pleased to see that in the description you could see information about their diet, temperature, pH requirements, how they breed and interact, things like territories and all that sort of stuff. And there's a bit of information as well about compatibility. So spend a lot of time, go through it nice and thorough. Good thing about a cart is you can always add things and take things out. And it's really, really important that before you do hit order and those fish start to begin their transport, you have an aquarium that's ready, that's been cycled, or you have media that's cycled. You have an environment that's going to be safe to put these fish into. What a lot of people don't realize is that maybe they've had one fish in an aquarium for a year and they think it's ready to go, and then they go online, they order 100 neon tetras, dump them in the next day and expect everything to be fine. Well, unfortunately, what you're going to find is that the bacteria colony has established to the point of supporting that one fish, and when you times it by 100, there's going to be an excess of ammonia whilst that bacteria colony is trying to keep up. So it's best of all always to order fish gradually. So just like that, the order was in, I got my confirmation email and my tracking number, and it was time to hit refresh on that page every minute for the next 24 hours. Now be aware that this period of time will probably be the longest day or so of your life. So I spent the time constantly refreshing the page, walking to the door, walking to the mailbox, making sure that nothing had mysteriously turned up, and eventually, of course, we did have a package at the door. And now it's time for the fun to begin. So what exactly do we do once we have a package in our hand? First thing I'd suggest is don't panic, don't get all overwhelmed and stressed about it. These fish have been in the box for 24 hours now, so another 5 minutes isn't going to make a huge difference. Of course, we do want to work through things as quickly as possible, especially if there is some issues going on inside here. But take a bit of time and read this material here that clearly says, please read before opening. It's going to be a bit of information around how to open the bags, how to acclimate, and so forth. As well as that, it's going to have upfront and clear the DOA policy. So unfortunately, every time you do ship livestock, there's always a risk that something is going to go wrong and the fish are going to be dead on arrival or DOA. So be sure to read these things really, really carefully beforehand, because the last thing you want to do is crack open this box, get all crazy, throw everything, dump the fish straight in the tank and find out that some of them aren't alive. The fish store can't be sure that anything outside the bag of water inside this box is safe for the fish. So you have to understand that especially when instructions are clear and upfront like this, which in this case is providing a photo or video of the fish within the bag unopened so that they can be sure that the problem lied within the shipping process. As well as that, I've seen this happen way too many times before where people have a dead fish arrive and they get all angry about it. They get on social media and start publicly bashing the aquariums. Make sure that you give them a chance to respond first, because a lot of times it's not the fault of the actual store itself, but something has gone wrong in the shipping process. So just be aware that they're people too. Give them a chance to make it right first, and if they do, then you know, both parties will be a lot happier in the long term. And then it's time to open up the box. So for this video in particular, I wanted to show you how to introduce plants, invertebrates, and fish into your aquarium. So I've ordered all of those things. In terms of what has arrived here, first of all, we can see a sample of fish food. So I'm really excited to give this flake a try. Then we have very important items. We have 2 heat packs here. The thing about heat packs that a lot of people don't realize is that due to the chemical reaction that's going in when you combine these 2 materials inside the heat pack, is they work best when they're moving. So there's some aspects that we can't control about this, like if the box is stuck at a postal depot overnight. But what we can do is, if you receive your fish to your workplace, or you can't actually open up the box straight away, it's a good idea to keep it moving every now and then, just to keep these heat packs active and putting out heat. That's a really important consideration because fish inside a bag can actually last up to 4 weeks. The thing that kills them during transport is actually the temperature. So unfortunately, there's no real reliable way to consistently provide them with the temperature that they need to live. So we do have to rely on things like heat packs, but people get really concerned about the welfare of the fish when they see them turn up in so much water like this Neolamprologus lelupi here, which is what I've ordered. So this amount of water, so long as it's in a sealed environment, which is an important distinction. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend keeping a lelupi in an aquarium with, you know, a few hundred milliliters of water. But when it's in a sealed environment, that oxygenation is not allowed to happen. So what's happening is, where fish usually produce ammonia, they're producing ammonium until such time as I open this bag and allow that oxygen to interact with the ammonium, which then creates the toxic environment. So we'll talk a little bit about that once we're ready to introduce the fish into the aquarium. But for now, don't panic that the fish is not in as much water as you would keep it in an aquarium environment, because it's a whole different ballgame when you've got a sealed bag such as this. In my case here, I have ordered, we've got 5 Neolamprologus lelupi here, which are all doing absolutely fine. You can see here that there's quite a lot of inflation in these bags, so obviously there's no air leaks or anything like that, so I'm really happy with that. We'll work fairly fast here. We'll just check them all out and do a bit of a welfare check, and then we'll quickly get these floated in our aquariums to get them up to temperature. If you do notice that overnight the heat packs haven't worked, or you know, they've got stuck in transit and this water is quite cold, well, just like people, you know, we don't sort of just want to dump them in really warm water to heat them up quickly. We want to gradually bring that change up so that the stress is reduced, so keep that in mind. So I've got 5 Neolamprologus lelupi there, which are looking really good and I'm really excited about. We have our plant here. This is an assorted crypt, so we'll take a look at that shortly. And then the invertebrates, I've ordered some yellow cherry shrimp here. So the other good thing about this is the cherry shrimp here, they've got something to cling onto. A lot of invertebrates, they like to have something to hold onto during transport. So you can see some swasitang in there and a little bit of plastic mesh material. So if you order inverts online and you see some stuff in the bag, don't be alarmed. It's generally just there for their safety and so that they can hang on to something during transport. So now we're going to head into the fish room and we'll get these bags floated, and I'll let you know a bit further about acclimation. Okay, so obviously we're in the fish room now. I've got the Neolamprologus lelupi floating there behind me, and I've got the shrimp also floating in their aquarium that I've had prepared for them, ready for their arrival. And once they're floating in the aquarium, we can relax, we can calm down, and we can start to process things, because as I mentioned, they can survive within that bag for up to 4 weeks, but it's actually the temperature that is what might kill them. So once they're floating in there, what's happening is the temperature within the bag is slowly creeping up to the temperature of the aquarium that we've placed them in. And I like to do that for at least 30 to 40 minutes, or up until we believe that the water in the bag will equalize with the tank water. So if it's a whopping great big bag with liters and liters of water in it, then obviously give it longer to float. There's no reason to rush this process because, as we mentioned, once they're up to that temperature, they're going to be perfectly fine. The shrimp I will treat a little bit differently, and I'll run you through that process shortly, but the fish here, they will handle a few stresses perfectly fine. And by stresses, I mean things like temperature, pH, maybe some ammonia, maybe some nitrates, other aggressive fish, anything like that, lack of food. So by floating the bag in the aquarium and allowing the temperature to be the same as the water we're going to put them in, effectively we remove one of those stress factors. As well as that, I've prepared this aquarium with lots of rocky outcrops and areas for them to hide. So as soon as we release them, they'll have a safe space to be able to adjust to the aquarium conditions. So again, that's another stress factor that we're trying to remove. So anything that you can kind of do to make it easier on the fish is going to help, especially during this acclimation process. For fish like this, I like to do the plop and drop method. I've used this for many, many years and I found it to be super effective. If you have other beliefs, you're welcome to do that. But for this video, I'm going to show you what works for me. There's a couple of reasons that I choose to do this method. First of all, we do not want any of that water inside the bag into our aquarium. Whilst they've survived in it perfectly fine, it could contain parasites or other things that we don't want in our home aquarium. Fish stores run very, very differently to the home aquarium. They're bringing in a lot of fish, moving out a lot of fish. There's a lot more risk for cross-contamination and disease. So to limit that as much as I can in my home fish room, I definitely want to eliminate that water. As well as that, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but the fish have been aspirating basically like we breathe, but within the water. So they've been releasing that ammonium, which as soon as I cut open the bag and it's exposed to oxygen, we're going to have a chemical reaction. The ammonium is going to turn into toxic ammonia and the pH of that water is going to crash. So it's really not great water conditions that we want to add to our aquarium. You'll often find that the water will be very, very smelly, especially once you cut open the bag. And you might even find that there might be other things in the water. Have you ever had fish turn up at your house and the water's a bit blue or green? Maybe the fish are lethargic and not really moving too much. It's not uncommon for fish stores to add chemicals into these bags to help aid the transitional process. So you might find things like methylene blue or malachite green, which is an antifungal thing, so that fish, if they get attacked with each other while they're in close quarters, they're less likely to develop fungus and other damage. As well as that, you might find sedatives, especially if you've got a lot of fish in one bag that are prone to injuring each other, then they might be a bit more calm and relaxed. In our case here, these Neolephalinx lupi are pretty aggressive fish, so they've been individually bagged, which I do like to see. The water does look clear, but we don't know if there's any sedatives or other chemicals in it. And as I said, I don't want to introduce any unnecessary pathogens or bacteria into my aquarium that I don't know about. So for that reason, I just allow the bags to float for 30 to 40 minutes. When I'm sure that that water inside the bag is the same as the aquarium, then I get my aquarium bucket and I get a large net. I sit the net over the top of the bucket and then I'm going to pour the bag, contents and all, through this net, draining out the water, obviously retaining the fish, and for those seconds that the water inside that aquarium is exposed to the oxygen and all those chemical reactions are happening, the fish are only exposed to it for a portion of that because they're soon drained through that and we can put them in the good water that is in our home aquarium. So these lupi are ready to go now, so I'll demonstrate that process right now. Yeah, I've got my bagged fish here. I'm holding it firmly, and don't hold it like that because obviously it's full of air right now, but once the air escapes, it can collapse and we can accidentally drop the fish. So I like to pinch the edge like so, cut the corner, and then quickly drop the fish into that net right there, draining all the water. So I do like to work pretty quickly and precisely during this process, so I'll quickly demonstrate that now. So right now, all that water is being toxic, changing, pH is crashing, and all of a sudden, the fish is now out of that and ready to be put safely in our aquarium. So once the fish are in the aquarium and you've confirmed that there's the right number, the right species, the right size, and they're moving around disease-free, then just let them settle in. There's no reason to press your face up against the glass for the next 20 minutes watching their every move. You'll have years and years to enjoy these fish, so just relax and let the fish get adjusted. Next up, I'll show you how to properly introduce aquarium plants into your fish tank. So obviously we don't really need to temperature acclimate plants, but there are some things and precautions that we can take before just dumping them into the aquarium. I know a lot of people do just dump them straight into the aquarium, but if you do that, you risk introducing pests like damselfly and dragonfly larvae, which can devastate populations of fish and shrimp. So if you've got the time and you're not planning on using the plant straight away, I would suggest actually growing it immersed. So transitioning from the below water form to the above water form, and that's going to eliminate a lot of the waterborne pathogens, diseases, as well as bugs and other pests. So from Bunnings or any local hardware store, you can get these little greenhouse kits, and just by putting some used aqua soil in the bottom, you can see I've grown quite a few aquatic plants in here. So I do have some terrestrial plants like the bromeliads, but I do also have the hydrocotyle tripetita. I've got some AR mini in there, some Hygrophila pinnatophyta as well, and plenty others. So this can be a really effective way to quarantine plants. It'll also grow really fast in that immersed growing state, so it can be a great way to create a little plant farm to get you by. Now with that being said, I do understand that a lot of people don't plan that far ahead, and sometimes you just want to order some plants to put straight in an aquarium. As well as that, through that transitional process, you will lose any submersed growth. So if you have a nice lush plant like this, assorted crypt here, you probably don't want to lose all that growth and have to start again. So if that is the case, what I'd recommend is using a bleach dip. So prepare 2 buckets. 1 bucket with 16 parts water and 1 part bleach, and 1 other bucket with a 5 to 10 times dose of a sulfur-based dechlorinator. And the reason for that is we're going to take this plant here and we're going to dip it in that bleach bucket for a period of 1 to 2 minutes. That's going to kill off any of that algae, those pathogens, those pests, and just basically do a bit of a cleanse. And when we put it into our sulfur-based dechlorinator, what you may or may not realize is that bleach is essentially really strong chlorine. So dechlorinator will actually neutralize bleach. Be sure that when you do that, you don't use any bleach with scents or colors or any other additives, and you should be totally fine. The plant might react a bit stressfully, especially something like a cryptocorini that is prone to melt back, so be prepared for that. Be prepared for some of the weaker leaves to maybe go a bit yellow, but at least you'll make sure that your shrimp will be perfectly safe and you won't be letting in any little assassins into your aquarium. So last but not least, I'm going to show you what I do to acclimate the very most sensitive things that I bring into this aquarium. So that is really sensitive fish, maybe really small fish and nanofish, or things like these cherry shrimp here. So for the purpose of this demonstration, the shrimp are way up the top there, and it's kind of really hard to film. So I'm actually just going to show you the technique that I use. I'll demonstrate a bit of the drip acclimation just out of this aquarium here, and then I'll show you the shrimp nice and happy in their aquarium that we prepared for them. So drip acclimation, you need 3 things really. Again, we're going to use a sulfur-based dechlorinator. I've got Seachem Safe here. That's just what I use in my fish room. There are plenty of alternatives available to that though. I use a nice clear, fairly large container. This one here is about 2 liters or half a gallon. So plenty of space for extra water as we drip in the tank water. As well as that, I use this little contraption here. So we've got a length of airline hose here. We've got a stainless steel tap, and we've got a large weighted air stone as well. And there's a reason for that. You do want a chunky air stone and a chunky tap, because these are going to help to weigh things down and keep the drip acclimation device in place. As well as that, you just need enough airline to get from inside your aquarium to inside your acclimation vessel. I like to use an air stone on the inside rather than a stainless steel tap on both ends, because the air stone is going to make sure that no shrimp or fish or anything else that might be in the tank will get sucked into our acclimation tub, of which the contents will eventually be discarded. So you might recall when I was talking about the plop and drop method, when we expose the bag contents to air, we're going to have that ammonium become toxic ammonia. So to get started, we place a little bit of our sulfur-based dechlorinator inside the acclimation vessel, because as soon as we dump the contents of the bag in there, that ammonia is going to be once again neutralized or detoxified once we do that. So just put a little bit of sulfur-based dechlorinator in your vessel here. Then you just sit your acclimation vessel below the waterline of the aquarium you're going to drip out of, because we're basically creating a simple siphon here. I'm just going to place the air stone in the aquarium, suck on this open tap here, and create a siphon that's going to start dripping water into the vessel. So you can now see that the water is flowing through our acclimation device here, and then you can just use the tap to control how many drips you want to go into the vessel. I like to go 1 to 2 drips per second, but it just really depends on how long you want to draw out the drip acclimation process. As a general rule, I wait until the water has tripled from the contents of the bag, so that way I can just make sure that there's going to be plenty of the tank water parameters to combat against the parameters that were inside the bag. So once our drip acclimation device is going and the water has reacted with the sulfur-based dechlorinator, then I just simply take our bag of invertebrates or fish and then just dump those straight into the vessel there. And then once the contents of the vessel has tripled, you just simply, just like before, pour the whole thing, fish, shrimp, whatever it is, contents and all, through a net into a bucket, strain that nasty water out that we don't want in our home aquariums, and then place the inhabitants in their new home. The philosophy behind drip acclimation is that, again, I mentioned stresses before when we're talking about the plop and drop method, and we are accepting the stress of the pH crash in this instant. But what we're doing to combat that is we're removing every other stress. So by dripping the water in slowly, we're going to get them used to the temperature and all of the little macro and micronutrients that are within the tank. So things like existing nitrates, maybe phosphorus, maybe a copper content, or anything else that might be in our water inside our home aquarium. You could of course do this for every fish that comes into your fish room, but I just don't think it's strictly necessary. In my experience, I haven't really needed to do anything more than plop and drop for your average fish. So there you go guys, that is how to acclimate all the different types of things that I bring into my fish room. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully it cleared up some of the daunting aspects of ordering things online for your aquariums. A couple of other things to keep in mind is seasonality. It's really important that if you got some fish that are really critical or really sensitive, well, it just makes sense, don't order them at the hottest day in summer or the coldest day in winter. Once again, you plan to have these animals happy and healthy for years to come, so there's no real rush. You can wait a few weeks until the weather is a bit more improved, and you'll probably find that your chances will be a lot better. The other thing to keep in mind is that whilst your inhabitants are still settling in, it might take them a few days to take to food. It's a good idea as well not to just dump a heap of food in there that they're not going to eat, because when you add new fish, the bacterial colony in your filtration is trying to create a bigger colony, which is trying to keep up with that excess ammonia that's being built from our new additions. So by dumping in more food, that's going to create more ammonia and you're going to heighten your risk of having a crash. Other than that guys, that's as simple as it can be. Thanks to Aquarium Central for letting me do this video for you all. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It always helps me out to smash like, hit subscribe and all that fun stuff. And other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.